Jefferson Historic Preservation Code Revision Commission. My name is Bunny Tricky Cotton. I'm the chairperson of this committee, and we're going to start with introductions with our council person, Laura.
Laura Ward, City Council Ward 2.
Stacy. Stacy, yeah.
Roger Gunnar.
Steve Viley.
Donna Dietz. Good, Bunny.
Rachel Senzi, City Staff. Carly Rinkemeyer, City Staff. Ann Stropman, City Staff.
Glover Brown.
Holly Stitt. Thank you all for being here. Procedural matters listed on the agenda. Do we have a quorum? Call for cases. Receive and review requests for continuances. Receive requests for reordering the agenda. Format of hearing. List of exhibits we have in our, I guess. Correct?
Well, our list of exhibits would be what's in the packet, right?
In the packet.
Yeah, but it's not a hearing.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, hopefully, we received, minutes today. Thank you, Carly, and you had an opportunity to review. It was, a while back that we met, well, January, I suppose. And we really didn't meet. We were fortunate to have our visitor. But anyway, if you had a chance to review the minutes, can I have a approval of the minutes and motion?
I have one more question.
Sure.
It's not a big deal. My name is Mr. Tony. It's right on top, but down in the body on page 1. You know, 100 years from now, so we'll look at that.
100 years.
No, that's the other change.
Approval of minutes. So corrected. Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Moving along here. I think, the attorney is entered. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brian Molman. I'm the city attorney.
Okay, and I think, Dr. Green, is that correct? Yes. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Deborah Green.
All right. Old business, destination of, the local historic districts and local landmarks. Okay, Rachel.
So we're gonna do kind of a little, we'll have the discussion of it. We went a little bit further than the designation of local historic districts and local landmarks, so we'll go through there and then we'll stop and move on to the next business. Brian did look at our draft and made some comments to it. So as we discussed, we'll update our document, because I don't, it was really, we know it was really hard to read the draft that was sent because we had all of our track changes, but because we hadn't formally met to discuss code in some months, we had a lot of changes that we worked on as staff. So we wanted to make sure that we were notating all of the changes that we were looking at. So I have our draft up here, and we're going to go ahead and bring on the track changes, and we'll go through and approve as this body. Is everybody okay with that?
I guess, or should we move on to the,
Well, that's up to you. Do you want to do that?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
Moving on to the new business, discussion of meeting procedures and voting, versus discussing. See, is there any discussion about that or any feelings one way or the other?
I'm not sure what you, are you
Well,
just asking, we're gonna follow a procedure, parliamentary procedure that each
Correct.
discussion point has to have a motion and a second
And be voted and determine
Okay.
whether this body approves or
before it
disapproves.
discusses. Okay.
How does this body feel about that?
If you have a motion and a second, then you have to have a discussion of that motion.
I understand, but does that mean we aren't going to discuss it before we?
We can discuss it. We can discuss it, any decisions being made. But before, it had been requested this body not do any voting and passing it on in a voting form like we passed it instead. Well, I think that's been a little bit of our problems. We've not, so there's no defined answer as to what we're approving or not approving. There's just like, this is okay with me, this isn't okay with me. So it was discussed at an outside meeting that,
Well, I feel that I would like to have them voted that way. You have a consensus,
correct,
and so I think that would be more appropriate.
okay? Anybody else?
You say. Question is, what do we do by consensus or with a formal motion and a second and a vote?
Right.
So that's what I was saying.
That's what consensus is, the voting matter, whether we vote or don't vote is what we've been, it was started, and you want to explain this better, Rachel, on.
Sure. So originally we talked about not to bringing the group to a consensus. That way, if we decide in the same conversation or later in the conversation, that we could just make the changes instead of voting to make the changes.
I said that's difficult to do though without calling for a vote and understanding.
Ryan, does that make sense to you? So
Yeah, I've done a little bit of this with the charter and I certainly understand the concern and wanting to make sure that the consensus is actually reflected by the votes. I will warn you that you're gonna bog down your progress a whole lot. That takes a lot of time. You're not gonna get through these things very quickly. The way I found the best way to handle this with the charter review was try to get everything that everyone agreed on, kind of generally, kind of set pat, and then where there seems to be need for further discussion and maybe a vote decision, staff could then kind of put the options, and so that way it's clear on what is being voted on. That, it's a two meeting process. But if you try to have a vote on kind of every single change in here, it's gonna take a lot of time. It seems like it's
Well,
gonna be.
maybe not, if we approve every single change in here.
You could,
You
it
can
could,
have one vote,
it
I
could be
mean,
one vote.
and if there's one thing that we don't agree to, then it's one thing we don't,
Yeah.
that we remove.
It's,
from the-
it really just kind of depends on how it flows and
Right.
and how it's going, you know.
I just felt like that we were spending a lot of time discussing things
Yeah,
when we could be voting on it and understanding who and where and what we could, people, yes or no.
it's hard to tell. It's kind of something that will reveal itself as part of the process.
Sure. Well, it kind of had, so that's why I was thinking it was necessary, but,
Sure.
and that's completely up to this body.
so I need,
We track it.
go ahead.
I tend to agree that we need to follow some kind of parliamentary procedure simply because of the fact that following whether it's Robert's Rules of Order, whatever, gives us structure, as Mr. Brown has just pointed out. We go on the record. And in addition to that, it gives us limitations. So if we start going on too long in a discussion under parliamentary procedure, we can put the brakes on and say either we, beat the horse long enough, or we're getting into,
Weeds.
into the weeds. I was
Gotta
gonna
stay on topic.
Yeah.
Do you want to bring that as a form of a motion? We did just vote on agendas and,
I move that we use parliamentary procedure to the step business of this.
second, Got a second, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any more discussion? I guess I should have asked for it before the vote. Okay.
So in other words, then, just to give an illustration, when I have been, talking about the Lafayette Street, we had no set procedures to handle those discussions. And I know that it appeared to have dragged on, but I wanted to make sure that all of the points were discussed before we did it. So if we go back now and we have some kind of a parliamentary procedure, then we know how to structure those conversations and we can move a little bit more.
Correct.
All right.
All right, back to you. It sounds like we got a plan.
Okay, so we're gonna go and just kind of go back to the beginning and start with some of the changes that we've updated. And Brian's taking a look at a lot of the code and work through. We're gonna go through what we can. It doesn't mean that we are gonna make it through all of it. If at any point you feel like we need to stop and have a discussion, now that we've got this new system, we'll work that into our agenda, but just stop me whenever you're ready. So we have, right at the beginning, a statement of purpose, City of Jefferson Historic Preservation Commission, City Council, and any participating property owners. I think before it had been any citizen, and we changed it to property owners because then that would mean that any citizen could, even if they didn't live there, weren't impacted by the property standards, could make that change. So the thought there was if you're going to impose land use regulations onto property that you should at least be either council, HPC, or a participant or a property owner. Or you.
Yep, I mean, does anybody have any questions about that? Do you feel good about that verbiage? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna unhighlight, or I'm gonna update this document as we go, because we've been working on this a lot. We constantly ask ourselves where we're at. Okay. So then, the next one seems to be formatting, because we have the local landmark and you put in weather, Brian.
Yeah, it should generally read as a sentence. This was mostly just bulletless, so just trying to make sense
In your
in a
legislative process.
structural, yeah.
Okay, and you took out, so whether the proposed local historic district and or local landmark, instead of shall, it's possesses significant character or value. Is everyone okay with this change?
Yes. I am. Are you all okay? I mean,
Yes.
clean this up yet.
Rachel,
Yes.
for a matter of procedure, would it be helpful if I propose a motion that we address each section as a group to vote on rather than you have to vote on each sentence, that way you'll have it on record?
Are you voting on each sentence or do you want to do?
That's what I'm asking.
Well, so because this is a new format now, I mean, what do you think? Do you think we should just do it in sections or do you think we should wait till the end? And approve it at the end, that you approve all the changes made, or? how do you-
I would say that, based on what I'm hearing, approving it by section or the larger sections, maybe by subsection, is appropriate. And I think the appropriate way to do it is as these are temporary votes. And then once you kind of get through everything, there will be a motion on the entire, article or whatever it is that we're viewing. So, that's probably an okay way to handle it. make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about all at once, but there will be a final vote at the area.
So if Rachel can explain the section that we're going through with your grammatical corrections and everything, and then at the end of the section, a motion can be made to approve that section.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this first section is, and I probably won't make all these changes or else we'll be here watching me edit a document. That's no fun for anybody. This first section for criteria for designation, well, do you want to go back and do the statement of purpose, updating that any participator? You're good? Okay. Okay.
Weathers,
And you're good for all the weathers in this section?
that's what's recommended.
It looks like they're all grammatical, isn't it?
Yes.
Basically, Brian.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Section. There's no number, so it's
Just criteria for
Section A.
designation.
All those in favor?
Harley, you did. Okay. The next section is about applications for designation. And again, this is, any participating owner of real property. So this just mimics what was above. We changed it from citizen to owner of property.
In this part that says on a form promulgated by the director, does that form exist?
So it would have to be created.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to have some sort of form. I mean, we'll have forms, I'm sure, for this process.
Is there any other questions?
So I have a note there on the word participating. So I apologize if I'm, a little bit newer to this process exactly, but it's not clear what the word participating means. What makes a property owner participating?
So you think remove it?
I think they're in the district.
Well, I mean, but it says a participating owner of real property within the proposed district. So if that's what it means, then it's redundant, then I would say take it out. Because the court, if court's reading that, they're gonna try to give meaning to the word participating. If it just means in the district, then it shouldn't be.
Should that have been, or any owner of participating real property or contributing real property? when we're talking about a district and you always talk about, well, is that contributing property?
What it says within the proposed district, so if you're an owner of real property in that district, that means.
But some properties may not contribute to a district. I was just wondering if,
But it's still, the rest of it would apply to them anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Any guidelines would apply to anybody in that district, whether their building is contributing or not.
not necessarily. I mean, if we're talking about an overlay, that's one thing, but if you're talking about like, tax credits or anything like that, if it's not participating in a historic district, it's not eligible. Shoot. Seen it.
In that sense, what does participating mean? You said if it's not.
That contributing, they call it, the technical term is contributing, is like what she's saying. So like, the historic district of Capitol Avenue, there's contributing buildings in line to that. The boundary may be around buildings, but some of the buildings are non-contributing buildings. And so those buildings, even though they're located in that district, are not eligible for historic tax credit.
So is contributing and participating used synonymously here?
I think that's what she was asking.
I don't.
That's what I was just wondering.
Well, let's take a real world example. Like say you want, let's look at Old Munisburg. And say you want to make that a local historic district. But then you've got the properties along Dumpling and you've got the gas station that's sitting there. So you would either, so there's the options, you would either take your properties and identify which properties are contributing or not contributing and make the contributing ones conform to the design standards. Or you would design your map in a way that carves around the gas station or your other buildings to make sure, because the gas station is not going to be, is not going to be a contributing building, but can it still reside in the district as a non-contributing? Yes. But that's the, you know, you either.
I
carve
think where
around-
that becomes a problem is when you're doing something that's 4 blocks of houses, that non-contributing buildings, it's a lot harder to carve it. But it can be done, it's just not always done. So I think that's irrelevant to this, I think. The question was,
yeah.
she was asking, did we mean to say that? And I don't think if it's any property owner in the district, whether they're contributing or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess,
I don't think
the gas
contributing-
station can nominate
Yeah, I
what
don't
they
think
want.
contributing and participating are the same in this.
Right.
Should we say maybe, or any owner of contributing or real property?
Because then the station owner couldn't
Could
nominate.
I mean, I would put it, say our owner of any real property, because the gas station should have the right, even if they're not contributing.
Which would be the change that Brian made.
Correct.
So that's the question he's asking. He's asking, what's the purpose of this
The
particular
word
word?
participating, if you're already
This
saying that
says
within
the
the district.
nomination can be made by these people. So do we need the
Word.
term contributing if the nomination can be made by any real property owner within the proposed district?
Yeah, the word contributing is not relevant to this, is participating redundant, because you're already saying they're in the district. Because contributing and participating are not the same. You're probably right.
I'm good with this change.
I'm sorry.
I'm good with this change.
Delete the term.
Participating. Everybody else?
So if I'm eliminating, just deleting participate.
Yes.
So it would read, nomination of a local historic district or local landmark may be initiated by the City of Jefferson Historic Preservation Commission, City Council, or any owner of real property within the proposed district.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
On a form that's gonna be created.
Form it's going. We need to write our order.
Anything else in that section?
Yes, so the last, if you'll recall, the last hot ticket item from our meeting in, is it November? We were talking about design standards and when that process happens. Does it happen, so the conversation that occurred was that there would be a nomination process and then there would be a year to create the design standards. And if I recall correctly, this body was not a fan of that because it put property owners in limbo for a year. And so what we did was, well, then it's gotta come in somewhere. So perhaps that's part of the application process where the design standards have to be drafted and proposed alongside, the application. That's, okay, okay.
All right, so should we have a motion for that section?
So moved.
Second? Any other discussion?
I do have a note here. And it's something that's been belabored, I apologize, but I really highly recommend a minimum threshold of property owners in a neighborhood kind of initiated process. So essentially, without that, you're saying the gas station person who has that application fee in the afternoon to turn in to fill out an application, they can subject an entire neighborhood to a process that no one else is particularly interested in participating in. And if that is a right that you want to give any property owner in the city, then this is the way to do it. But if you want a general consensus from the neighborhood to start the process, then I think you would need to have some sort of minimum threshold. Now, 75% too high? Absolutely. That is a skyrocket amount. Generally, for these types of things where you're forming districts, 50% is a typical number that you'll see. That may suggest it needs to be 50%. Could the number be 33% or 30% or even as low as 25%? That's still a nice little plurality of property owners, a good core group of people to work on a project. But to say that one person can, initiate a process, because this is quite an involved process that will have a significant impact on property rights after it's done. Do you want a minimum amount of cooperation and consensus in the neighborhood before that starts? And in situations where you have a large amount of rental property and it's hard to gather property owner signatures, I would say that's where the either city council or HPC driven process is appropriate, where it's just too difficult for whatever reason, but the project is so important that it's the city council or the commission that says we need to move forward with this, even though it's not clear we have a consensus of property owners in the area.
What's the criteria for the difference? Well, the versus your numbers, 33%. I mean, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying any number would work that at least provides a significant plurality in the neighborhood. I don't know what that number is.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is this not where we were saying that all property owners would be notified and able to come and discuss? I don't see it written here, but I thought that's what we had determined.
We're only in the nomination, we aren't in the process yet.
And so that's just my suggestion. It's not a legal requirement or anything like that, but this could be weaponized.
Yes.
By someone who doesn't have the best intentions. Okay. You guys don't want to do whatever? Okay, I'm gonna drag you through this process.
I think you're right, that, 75% is way too high. It probably is good to have some minimal thing. I'd suggest a third of the property owners, 33%.
In keeping the notary. That notary is hard.
No, I wouldn't say that needs to be done. Unless you're gonna take them around with you.
Well, I did.
33% or
Just 75,
70?
I was striving for 75, but I got 70. So I have to do a conservation district instead of a historic district.
Is there any legal reason why?
The notary just gives, kind of greater assurance that the signature is valid.
And then we're just on the nomination.
Yeah,
Not
but
yet,
there's
not on the.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly concerned about the notary because there is an entire process that then follows.
Right.
Plenty of opportunity for people to say, hey, I didn't sign that.
Yeah.
So I'm not fairly concerned with the notary
All right,
as an opening step.
all
To
right.
get this rolling, I make a motion that signatures from 33% of property owners within the proposed district. As that section.
Second.
So it's property owners and not parcels? I mean, I just want to make sure it's clear to a person like what they're getting 33% of. I can't remember how it broke down because,
One person for 10 of the 15 properties.
so it,
What is that?
That was where we got, this
How's
is
that?
where we ended up taking it
Yeah,
out.
there's a way to do it. The community improvement district statute calls it per capita and essentially defines it as if there's a dozen properties, you would need the signatures representing 4 of those properties. And then I can bring back language that kind of reflects that. As opposed to saying, well, this property has 10 owners, brothers and sisters. And so we're going to count those as, counting this on the aggregate. That probably doesn't make any sense. I think that the intent, at least the way I see it, is 33% of the properties.
So if I own 33% of a proposed district, then I would be the only one that had a site. That's right.
So didn't we, in Article 1 or 2, define a percentage for something? It's been a while and I didn't bring on.
I don't remember. I remember this percentage getting taken out and instead having a public hearing process.
Yeah,
Was what,
that's what I
Yeah.
recall. This is the public hearing.
I think we agreed on a percentage. I remember public hearing, but I think we agreed on a percentage. Unfortunately, I don't have my notes, so.
well, if you don't bring it back, if you find it, because I don't remember that, but
It was at the very beginning when we were doing Article 1 or 2 and we were defining things, so it's under definition.
We have a motion made and seconded.
All those in favor? Any opposed?
Me,
it's 33%. Okay, next section is designation process. My goodness, Ryan, you wrote a book. Hold on, I gotta catch up.
Yeah. I mean, because of the change. It was brought to the attention of the chair that the last vote should have been amended before voted on. Because it was approved
That whole section.
and then it was changed.
I thought we were just voting on the amendment, actually.
She had taken the whole she was counting when we voted on that last section, she took the whole section down to the designation process. And then Ryan brought up the change in the numbers. So technically, we need to revote that motion to approve the section as amended.
Sorry, I jumped in late.
All right. What I get for being a parliamentarian.
So
Move to approve as amended. So you have it.
all those in favor? Any opposed?
That's okay. So the next section is the designation process. And most of it seems to be grammatical. Except he did change, instead of draft proposed design standards, changed it to final design standards because that's now going to be part of the application process. So those should be established once they start going through the process. 30 days, to receive it by, Planning and Protective Services staff in order to get it on the Historic Preservation Commission calendar. And it will require a public meeting. Now then he has this whole thing. Okay, hold on.
That he doesn't agree with, it sounds like.
All right.
Oh, I'm over that.
You're on.
You moved on.
That's an old comment.
Okay.
So
So-
you're fine with design standards with the applicant shall include. You're fine with all of that?
Mhm.
As it reads, proposed design standards that are appropriate for the proposed local historic district and that follow the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. Application of R4 designation of a local historic district shall not be considered complete until design standards are drafted for architectural, archaeological appropriateness by city staff. The city staff recommendation on architectural, archaeological appropriateness shall be appended to the application accorded to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, so essentially the way it was drafted, it said that city staff had to approve the proposed design standards. That's not appropriate. Staff is better as a recommending body, and so if there is a problem with a proposed design standard that city staff, sees, our job would to be then to flag it and let the HPC know, hey, this is an issue. So if someone says every building has to have 2 gargoyles, we can't say, well, no, we're not going to let you go discuss that in a public meeting. We would just flag it and say, this is probably not no longer architecturally appropriate. To give approval to staff is too much.
Okay.
Well, I like gargoyles.
Okay. So we're gonna move on from design standards because that's all coming at the beginning with the application. City staff would of course work with the applicant to make sure, and that, again, like Brian said, we flag the difference or the things that we would suggest for updates, and that would be up to HBC. Okay, public hearing requirements. So far, it seems to be just grammatical.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
wanna
do we
vote
need
on that
to-
section.
You want to vote on section, so it's not designation process A through
A, B,
C.
C.
Oh, it's public hearing. Are you okay with public hearing? I mean, if everybody's read ahead, I'm just going through and making sure it's not content versus grammatical.
It's grammatical.
So so they have the address of the proposed local landmark versus the physical boundaries of for the physical. So we added in the local landmark as well to the process.
C looks mostly like grammatical down to approval procedures. Yeah, we moved agenda notice.
Why was that struck?
It's state law. We have to do that anyway.
So it doesn't need to be in
It
there.
doesn't need to be there.
So basically, it looks like, I don't know what these sections are because there's no numbers.
You're doing designation process A, B, C, D,
Well, not all of the,
down to number 7.
yeah, so we're at D7. Approval procedures.
Okay. Have a motion to approve? Everything about that?
So,
About 7. Second?
Yeah.
Any,
Go ahead.
any discussion or? All those in favor?
Now we're at 7. So I have a question. So local landmarks, the Historic Preservation Commission shall make a recommendation to either approve or deny an application for designation as a local landmark. Such recommendation shall be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We don't do that now. Are we
Never
supposed
done that.
to?
Well, it depends on what you want to do with it.
How so?
If it's like what we have now, where it's mostly honorary, then no, we could probably just go to the city council. But if the code amendments are looking to use the local landmark designation as a vehicle to then enact land use standards, design standards, performance standards of some sort, then yeah, it would need to go through the planning zoning commission. So that was a question that we had talking about yesterday is what do we want to actually use local landmarks for?
What do you mean by honor?
There's no coercive effect behind.
But I think they have all gone to P and Z.
No.
School Street went to P and Z.
That's all, that's
That's a
district. This is the local landmark.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. It's, okay.
Oh, see, I disagree. I've always disagreed with this. Rachel's probably that historically in Jefferson City, if you're designated a local landmark, it is honorary. That's it.
Except in our ordinance, it says that we have to get approval and do HPC bring to permits or whatever, which we didn't know until we came. But that's in this current city ordinance.
I would say that's not best practice.
It's definitely not.
It's not been the practice.
No practice at all.
And so
But that is what's in there, so.
That's-
that is-
yes.
So,
Have you seen that with drone
yes,
keepers?
yes, I have.
Because I haven't.
What's
Yeah,
that?
it was pointed out.
It's,
I know it's been.
Again, I don't remember where it is. Rachel, do you remember? Where it was actually said that?
it's on the application.
Yeah, it's on the application, it's in.
What was that?
yeah, that's not law. That's just promulgated by the current.
Section
I
eight,
thought we found it.
eight
in
dash
section-
4(6). I'm gonna give you the physical, because I've got the,
Because we found it, I thought it was found in the ordinance and then we went back and saw it was on the application.
Yeah, I think that's how we found it.
We didn't know that.
I know. Well, but, and then with the HPC didn't know how to treat it. I didn't know how to direct those, anytime a permit came in.
We would like it to be honorary.
Well, and that's the question. Here, let me pull open where it's at. But that's the question is, if you want it honorary, and that's fine. But there's also, is there the expectation that because you're a local landmark, that your property would be preserved in perpetuity? Regardless of who owned that property, whether it's you or your children or a different owner. Code. It's so.
Well, if we do that, then something needs to be done that people understand that this is on, like we were talking about the title, because I had no idea that it was on. Because the plaque wasn't out there, and I didn't know that it meant anything that I had to go.
When you bought your building, yeah.
I have to have permission to change anything. So if we're going to do that, and by all of the people who already have them, if this is the case, and continue that, then there needs to be something in the title. I think that's what
Like
we
a
talked
document.
about on the title stating that this was somebody who is buying that, just like you would know it in a historic district. You would know. There are
The title research.
I think that's what they were talking about before.
Which is what we did talk about before, but so I said, no, I think it should stay honorary. Just, hey, look, you're a historic.
Yeah.
Have a little plaque.
It was about whether they were gonna attach that notification to the deed or the title. That's so that the new landowner would know.
That you have to conform to that.
So here's up on the screen is the existing code. Or procedure for and it's the same thing for a landmark or historic district. So they're supposed to go through the same review process for building permits, and design criteria. And we have not been doing that.
So this is what I had to say no, because we have not been doing that and nobody ever thought that we had to do that. And there are so many of them out there that nobody ever thought that. So now,
Even though these are self-nominated and that is on the application, I mean, is it on the application?
It is.
And it's been signed by the property owner.
Yes.
Yes, so, except that I bought 30 of them. I didn't sign that. I didn't see that application. I had no idea that I was under.
Was it in your title work?
Yeah.
You had no idea.
I think you brought up in one of the
I got a
meetings that
plaque.
that would have some hindrance to the person wanting to buy or not buy
Right.
that, yeah.
Not to mention, I think the people who have them will be going, wait, I didn't know that because even like Steve didn't know that to this point, and you've got one. you
Well,
know?
and goes back to contributing versus non-contributory properties as well. You know, what's that designation? What's that distinction?
And that was a non-contributing building that had an historic plan.
But it would depend on when it became a landmark.
It's an
Because
oxymoron.
it used to be that that wasn't on the application and they became landmarks by the HPC. We were the ones that would come to the meeting with 5 properties. We'd write them up on the whiteboard and we would all go up there and vote. And the top 5 would get, the property owner would get notified. That's probably how yours
With the
happened.
approval of the city council, so there was that step.
But there was nothing, I don't think at the time on the applications. I think you had to agree to put plaque on the building, but there was nothing in the ordinance. I mean, I think when this changed, when the application changed,
When was that?
you don't know.
That's why I feel like it's.
This
the
ordinance,
state
this
that-
ordinance is from.
Kind of grandfathered.
I'm sorry,
1998.
This ordinance is from 1998.
which is about as long as we've been.
That's right.
Landmark.
And if we want to do this, it's going forward this way, but yet there is some sort of tie to a title or something that if somebody is buying.
Unless we have
they
grandfathered
understand,
in.
Because,
Previous.
right, I said going forward.
Yeah.
If we decide that this is the way we want it to be on a landmark, then going forward, there has to be something that gets there, so a property owner knows that they are there versus if they don't have a plaque on their building. Because 2 of mine didn't.
Yeah.
You just gave me one.
I did. You didn't have one. There was a landmark.
I know, I was gonna nominate it until you told me it was.
So now the question is, do we go forward having this in place and just grandfather everybody else in? And do we need to do something else down the road with titling or whatever?
Can anybody think of a scenario where that'd be negative to a property owner?
Yeah, if they know about it ahead of time, I mean, if they don't apply for it.
I mean, I guess
they
is
know.
it a way to make it? It's falling, it's a miniature district then, at this point, right? I can say, I want my house to be a little, fall into all of the rules that the district gets. So I don't understand why.
I just had a thought, and I'm probably way off the base. All of these standards and things that you're placing on these particular properties. What if I come in and I just need a house and I need a place to live and whatever, and then I see that all of these restrictions are being placed on this house, I'm not gonna wanna buy this house, because number one, it's gonna put me in a situation where I'm not gonna be able to afford this house. And so then when you look at a situation like Jefferson City, where you're looking at, you want as much affordable housing as you can find. And so a lot of the older housing stock in Jefferson City is what's gonna fall in these historic districts to begin with. And so
If they become a history.
well, but I'm just saying that if they are, and I'm a low income person and I find a house that I want and I can afford, but yet I go in, am I gonna be restricted from buying that house because of all of this mandate that's put on that house? You know, I'm just,
I feel like, just like Capitol Avenue has an overlay on it. And anybody who's buying into Capitol Avenue is buying into that area, knowing that and buying it for a reason. And if there just happens to be, you know, and the overlay is really not super restrictive. The overlay that was designed by Capitol Avenue property owners is pretty, it says you have to have like 3 architectural features and they can be any of these things, you know, so I don't find it a hindrance in my mind, but, and it would only be within these districts. So I don't find that being a hindrance. What I don't understand is, I guess we would be just saying a local landmark is, this house is its own little district.
Yeah, and remember, it may not be a house. It
Or
could be something,
building.
it could be something different.
Right.
The site.
The clock.
Yeah.
Like a factory.
Well, I mean, so.
So where does that get us?
Maybe we were at number 7, approval procedures.
Well, this gets us to, do you want local landmarks to be
Honorary.
honorary or
Go through the
regular?
process.
I think we're having some issues here, I don't know.
I can see going forward, as you said,
Mhm.
and not putting the burden,
On the folks who already
yeah. because
applied before they
didn't
knew
have-
that.
So that, it shouldn't
Yeah.
apply to them at all, but.
Going forward, yeah.
I think it should.
If you're going to keep with the idea of a historic building and a historic landmark and honoring it for its history, then it needs to maintain its history.
So is there something we can do with the titling?
Yeah, I was gonna say, disclosure's gotta be
Yeah,
an
that's
issue for the, I mean, that's where things fall into a shade of gray here in terms of purchases and it speaks to, it speaks to Mr. Brown's point, but that is not, that absolutely is not what most people in the market, no one wants to be blindsided by that.
Mhm.
But the historic district overlays, typically those people that's being marketed to a segment of a pool of buyers, okay? What we don't want is people purchasing properties where
getting hit.
they find out after the fact. I need a new roof, or I need to paint, and our district is exceedingly flexible in what we require. But we want to make sure that there's disclosure for property owners.
And technically, according to the statute that's already written, anybody doing that would get hit right now.
Is that how you read that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's. The way I read this, although these don't have section numbers, I assume these sections that we currently have are getting replaced, so there's no real need to fix this because we're fixing this. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There needs to be a process that is not backward looking in order to apply these.
And consistent and full disclosure. I mean, transparency on this. I mean, let's say I go and I put a contract on what may or may not be a contributory property to an area. And I find out if I'm gonna remodel it, I'm gonna flip it for investment purposes. And I find out 4 to 6 weeks in that, oh my gosh, this has been deemed a historical site, it's a historical property, and there was a designation, and I purchased that not knowing that, and purchased the responsibility of that without knowing. And my economic plan for the property was completely different than what it's going to end up being. So for property rights, there needs to be disclosure.
Is there anything or mechanism within the system that, let's say I'm a low income and I'm a first time home buyer, and I see this house in this historic area, and I want to buy this house. Now, this is just me talking. Isn't this just a cleverly disguised way of restricting a neighborhood?
All of this is restricted. But as regulations, this is restricting. This is restricting what you can and can't.
Well, to some degree, are you asking, is it
as a buyer, you have the right to go out and source and procure and put a contract on a property based upon your means. We develop subdivisions all the time, and there's restrictions on those subdivisions, and there's restrictions because people are buying into an investment. In my subdivision, you have to have attached garages. I chair the subdivision committee. Somebody comes in and they want to put in a home there that's got basement car garages. That does not meet the design that all of the property owners made that investment are going to realize. So we're going to vote that down. You want to build a house here, you're welcome to build a house here. But you have to put an attached garage on it. That's what we all bought into. You're going to purchase this piece of land and it's been titled and deeded and written this way. But you know that going in because your realtor, Bunny Tricky Cotton, is going to say, oh no, this house won't meet subdivision restrictions.
Okay, but if I really wanted that house, I guess my question was, and it's got these restrictions and you have to do these certain things, I think it was the design.
You don't have to do that unless you're changing the house.
Changing the house.
But that's
And
what-
there's certain, it's not just changing the house, like if you wanna paint it pink, you can paint pink. But if you wanna take that porch off and something that requires a permit to the city, you're gonna have on any house.
On any house.
Whether there's an overlay or not, you have restrictions to go up to building code.
Well, and that's one thing, yeah.
So this is just saying, well, if you're changing the porch, it kind of has to have this kind of look to it. Or if you're
Putting in addition.
putting on addition, it has to have at least this much percentage of windows on that addition and built out of brick, so it fits in with the rest of the neighborhood.
Okay,
So-
Ron, would you help me with this? I guess what I'm wanting to look at, is this going to be a modern day homeowners association?
No, it's an addition to the building code. That's the best way to think about it. It's an addition to the building code. It's building code plus.
Okay,
And will this turn off a certain segment of buyers? Yes. Will it attract a different segment of buyers?
yeah.
Yes. So the overall effect on the housing market? No, I don't know. It just depends on how big those different segments are.
And how many districts there are, I mean, like, right now, if you buy on a few blocks on Capitol Avenue, you are under an overlay. If you buy the next block over, you're not, so.
Those are choices, like those are individual choices of buyers and sellers. You know, they're gonna go where they can, as a buyer of the market, I'm gonna look at properties that I can afford. And because that's where my lending's gonna come, if I don't have cash, my lending's gonna designate based upon my debt to income ratios, where I go and purchase. As a citizen, I have all those options of where I'm within my loan power, my purchasing power to go and put a contract on.
Well, we all know that the social stratas are changing in the country today. And so, you've got those first-time home buyers and everybody wants to buy into the dream of America. And I want to move into this area because I like it. I want to live there. But again, the question is, if I bought into this area and into everybody else's investment, but I don't have the means to buy into this investment, but I want to live here, are there programs out there that will assist those homeowners?
That's something that's not in this
Yeah.
ordinance, that would be
Well, yeah, this,
your first time buyer,
I know, I
all
understand that.
kinds of
I'm
grants.
just saying
I
that,
mean,
Yeah.
enacting these ordinances, and you're putting this in place. And like we said, it's gonna restrict certain segments of the buying community that aren't gonna be able to buy into this. Is there anything in place that if this is where I really want to live, but I don't have the means to buy into this investment, is there a program, is there
No.
something out there?
No. And what you have to focus on is what she's saying. Your economic situation determines where you are going to live. So if you cannot afford the neighborhood, if you cannot afford to be under the overlay on capital, then it's out of your purse. And so you won't be there.
And we don't know what the designs are, because all the designs are gonna be totally different from that area. It's when they nominate, they're coming up with what restrictions they want on there in that area. There's not a set, this is a restriction for you to be a historic area. What we're setting up here is an ordinance that if you want this, you have to have 33% of your things, and this is what we'd like to have on it. And then there's a public hearing with everybody to determine whether those restrictions are good or bad or whatever. And it goes through the whole hearing process to become whatever those restrictions are for those few houses that are making that district on that nomination. Has nothing to do with the whole city as a whole. So this isn't an overlay over the whole city. This is only for this little area.
And we're not even talking.
And we don't
district
even know
of
what
this.
those
This is the
restrictions
landmark.
are.
And these are just talking about the landmark designation, and a landmark designation does not mean that a house is not affordable. A good
Well-
example is the house that I have is a landmark house, and it's in a very affordable,
And
low,
it's not in the overlay.
yeah, and it's not even in the overlay, but it's a landmark designated house. Because
I
it's-
appreciate your concerns and I understand them. I truly do. And it is a concern of realtors and homeowners, and I understand it over.
It's outside of scope.
But
For
I think
the
we're
language that we're writing. That's
Right.
scope.
No, I agree all of this needs to happen. This is how you preserve historic nature or historic neighborhoods. But what I'm concerned is, like I said, the different stratas in the country are changing now. And everybody still, despite the economic situation, everybody wants a part of the American dream. And so if I've got this money and I want to buy this house in this historic area, and
You have to do whatever you can to increase your income to be able to afford it. You know, that's we're not, the language and the mission for this group is to establish the language so people can come forward and get through the nomination, designation, application process in a meaningful way that's fair and is equal for everyone. But what we can't do is talk about this title disclosure and that's having that statement about title disclosure is protective for buyers and investors that have gone in and purchased properties and now they find out, oh, this is outside of the scope of what I intended for the property.
that's
But
like
that's-
benign agreement.
But beyond that, it becomes the buyer's personal responsibility and ownership. When you purchase a property, you purchase a full bundle of rights. And that includes feasibility and all the things. And so if you become the responsible person, there's nobody out there that is going to, unless it's through HUD and assisted housing, nobody like this is gonna be able to. Stacy Young wants to purchase a property, but she can't afford the renovation, so there's a fund somewhere that we don't have anything like that at the secondary market in play anywhere.
And it's not part of the work.
And this is not what we're on currently right now, from what I am understanding.
I think Glover I think he's traveling down a little bit. So if you have somebody that owns a house and then they can't afford to keep the historic character of it, then what? So we do actually, we've written ahead. And we talk about like what process. So for example, if you move into a house that has a slate roof and all of a sudden you can't afford to replace your $70,000 slate roof, what process do you undergo? And that's something that we have to talk about, but I think
We're not there.
That's-
We're not there. We're not there. So
I
this is,
apologize.
so you're fine. You're fine.
I
You're
apologize.
good. You're good. Okay, so back to Holly's comment about the Preservation Commission shall be recommended, or whether we go through the process. What, did you have
I am good with us making it a district, but I think that there needs to be some way that we
grandfather in the.
Well, when we
previous.
need to grandfather, I think personally, we need to grandfather in anybody from here forward or backward. But is there any way we can make sure that that's some sort of disclosure like on the title or something?
I don't know, I do not know with new title search, the only, Betty, through disclosure, you know, and then it falls in as a for sale by owner, and what's the sale vehicle?
Here, I might be able to help you.
Thank you.
Where does this go?
And I thought we had talked about that.
Oh,
We keep circling back.
you look at G on the, I don't know, what's that, fourth, fifth page? Fifth page of this packet?
Recording of,
Note to self, we'll put numbers on page numbers.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So once it gets through the city council process, the ordinance is filed in the report. It should be.
yeah, the next page,
So then it would be on title.
recording of
If it's
local
recorded.
historic districts and local landmarks.
Well,
Right here. E.
that goes back to Polly. How we, I mean, how do we ascertain that? How do we know everything's always getting recorded and filed? Why was yours overlooked? Were you able to unearth why you were unaware? I mean,
No, there wasn't any thing before.
I had no,
Nobody did
I
that
had no
before.
plaque on my building. And I had nothing.
The owner never put the plaque up, which they were supposed to.
and the owner didn't disclose. And was it for sale by owner?
No. I went through real, on both of them.
So title work was prepared. But therein lies the problem.
But they
So that's
did
why
not
I was wondering
understand
if there
this.
could be something that is put on that, I don't know. You know,
Well,
don't
if you
like
got a
it says
landmark,
it
there's
should-
gotta be a way to track the landmark. So where does that?
So so when I
orient?
found out on the first building I had a landmark, they came into the city and got me to
Say,
say,
right here.
But I don't think it's been
said all that, but nobody told me I had to have, you know, permission to do anything. On the shoe factory, I had no clue at all. I actually went to nominate it. And Rachel goes, you already.
You're already in.
Okay.
So I just asked the question. In the ones that we've approved the past couple of years, nobody's ever said, okay, recorder of deeds, this is now a landmark. They've never sent that over there.
Well,
That's what
this is draft code. It's not in the.
Okay,
existing.
so this one wasn't existing before?
No,
No,
that's what I
that's
said. I want to make
okay,
sure that
that's-
it is.
okay.
I'm good with it as long as we can
Well,
do that.
Yeah, and
That-
that's
that's where
the
I-
kink in the hose, is trying to figure out how to track that.
Well, it will be done in the future.
Well, as long as the.
We have-
as long as the land.
Yeah.
But
I just wanted, I didn't know.
would like to go back to this.
Okay, Donna would like to backtrack to where we were.
For local landmarks, the second sentence, such recommendation shall be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Does that have to take place after HPC approves? Oh, this is dealing local landmarks only, it's not local historic districts.
So,
Does it have to go to planning and zoning?
so it's going to HPC, then planning and zoning, and then council,
That's what this is
like a
saying.
PUD.
No, it shouldn't.
I don't think
I
it
don't
needs
think
to
it
go to
needs to
planning
go
and
to
zoning.
PUD.
It depends on what you want to do with landmarks. If you want to use the designation to then exercise the coercive powers of the government to dictate what a person can and can't do with their property, then it has to go through the P and Z. Because the P and Z is the designated hearing place under chapter 89 in the state statutes. It says any exercise of the land use controls by the government has to go through a certain process, which has to include. So if it's honorary, no. But if it's going to be regulatory, then it does have to go to the P and Z.
So we leave it in.
All right,
Question, do we know what the time frame is between each one of these entities?
If it follows it, it's about 6 months.
From start to finish?
That sounds probably right.
If it follows the same PUD,
It might be,
because you have to
Make application. 30 to
put
45.
that in so much in front of the the P and Z. Well, this one's gonna go through HPC first, then it goes on to the P and Z thing. And then once the P and Z thing, then the city council has to read it and stuff, and then the next time they do the public hearing, so.
4 meetings.
So grandfathering, though, would eliminate the need for P and Z.
No,
No.
That's
honorary.
separate issues.
Making it honorary where there's no restrictions on it, it's just a nice little plaque that's on their thing saying, hey, I'm historic.
What's that?
Would get rid of all that,
How do we?
but it wouldn't also have the benefit.
To be completely honest, if a local landmark and a local district are gonna perform the exact same way, I would just get rid of the landmark.
That was my, that was in the beginning.
Just,
It's like-
you can have one property districts. There's nothing in the world that says you can't do it. It's a little
Yeah.
weird. Well, this is a local historic district. We can make up the rules.
You'll have 100%
That's what we're doing.
signatures.
That will really confuse people.
Easy, I'm sorry, no.
Well, my question is we keep saying we're gonna grandfather in the old ones, but how do we do that if the old ones weren't compliant with the code in the first place?
They are compliant because it says if we don't do anything with it after 45 days, it's deemed.
So some follow the rules and some don't.
Anything before this time, it's honorary. The bottom line is before this time, this goes through, becomes whatever, it's honorary. After, if we vote for it to be this way, then after it's not honorary.
Or maybe you just create a different category. Your single property district is in the landmark, it's a local historic site. And just have the programs be separate.
Sites are different than. I'm
Site.
sorry, I'm.
Citus, figure out another
But I
word.
vote that we
Area.
make it honorary for a local landmark and leave districts being with restrictions, because you can have a one-house district, and this, to me, is a little bit. That's me, I'm moving that.
Is there a second?
I think I agree with it. I'm not sure I completely understand it. Say it again. I'm so confused.
I'm gonna move that local landmarks are honorary and historic districts are separate because you can,
They're regulatory.
they're regulatory. The districts are regulatory, the landmarks are not. They're honorary, meaning they don't have to go through any of this process. There's a little plaque.
They're like being on the National Register.
Or having a golden.
Or
having a golden
hammer.
Shot me one of those.
That is my motion. And then we can have a one-house district.
I'm pretty sure I agree with it. I guess I'm a second.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Let me ask a question. So one of the areas where I could see it being the opposite way would be in regard to demolition. And what I'm thinking of is, we got this great historic local landmark. Well, honorary, right down tomorrow, but I know we have a demolition ordinance too. So how does that fit in? I mean, what are they? For the demolition ordinance, if it's 50 years and over,
It's 50 years, has to be approved. Again, up to Avenue. 50 years has to go through HPC elsewhere, but 100 years has to be approved. So HPC sees them at 50 outside of Capitol Avenue. HPC sees them at 50, but if they say no.
No, they
it
can
just
still
won't
go through.
100, they have to be.
is that part of this ordinance or is that totally different?
That's part of our existing ordinance.
It's an existing ordinance. It's
He's
not-
wanting to know, are we gonna get
Oh,
that
we're
here?
gonna get that?
Eventually.
We're gonna, I mean, we'll get there. I think, as far as how we were interpreting on a staff level, we were thinking that for the demo, it would be National Register districts, National Register properties, local landmarks, and local historic districts would be reviewed.
Reviewed or approved?
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet.
But we will, I guess that's what he's asking.
But
Are we
instead-
gonna
instead
hit
of-
that here?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
will.
we're looking at everything in reference to historic preservation, because this is probably going to be a chapter versus dispersed across the code right now. Establishing its own chapter, likely.
So the other question is, if we go with honorary here,
Mhm.
does that mean we're not gonna be able to?
I mean, that's up to this group. I mean, I don't see any reason, if you make it honorary, it still could go through the demolition process. Right now, we're making every property, a commercial, residential, whatever it is, if it's 50 years old, it has to go through the HPC. We had to review the central electric buildings off of Jefferson.
We wanted to add something to her motion.
Yeah, if that's the way you want to go, I would suggest that staff go back and draft these as two separate procedures. There's no reason of having a combined procedure for two programs that are
Different
really
things.
meant as separate things. So it would be a local historic district process and a separate landmark process. There's no point, it gets very, very confusing. I mean, that's all part of the reason this document is as confusing as it is because it's layering both landmarks and districts into the same process. So that would be a suggestion.
So
that
regardless
staff-
of if they're honorary or,
No,
okay, just if they're honorary.
if they're honorary,
Okay.
so.
Because if they're not honorary, they're gonna have all that.
All right, so there's a motion and a second on the table. Any other discussion?
Can the motion be restated?
David? Be amended, I suppose.
No,
He
restate.
just wants to hear.
Oh, yeah,
The
sorry,
motion.
sorry.
The motion is to make local landmarks honorary. Keep the local historic districts
Regulated.
Thank you.
Yeah. okay. All right. Any other
Second.
questions?
So discussion,
Any other,
I know, but,
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hey,
Okay, moving forward.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have to. You
so
need
if
to
we
go back and
approve the,
rewrite.
procedures, or can we approve the procedures now that, you guys have redefined the categories?
I think we have to, if they're gonna be honorary, I think we need to split them out.
So what we already voted on that include local landmarks.
We have to go back.
I think staff can
Staff can do it.
appropriately act.
And do a consensus.
Yeah, the landmark provisions.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
And then bring it back in and we can
Yeah.
approve it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they can go forward on the rest and just ignore the section.
just if it says local landmark in here, just read past it.
Okay, so this is the new part, local historic districts. Recommendation from applications for designation of a local historic district shall be a two-step process. First, the Historic Preservation Commission shall make a recommendation to either approve or deny a designation of a local historic district.
Hold on, where are you at?
We're on B.
B.
We're still under 7, but now we're on B. Local
Okay.
historic district.
We're up here, okay.
Okay. And I think, is this where you're talking about the legislative process? Ryan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the conversation around this is that when an application, that this has to be a legislative process. So there it goes to the Historic Preservation Commission. And it's not up to the Historic Preservation Commission by itself to determine if it becomes a local historic district. So if the HPC were to if the HPC were to approve or deny, it would still go through the process. Just with that package recommendation. So it would go HPC, P and Z, council. So HPC could say no, P and Z could say yes, and then it'd be up to council to make that decision.
But I believe if that happens, Ryan, council has to have a higher vote.
That's just for P and Z. I mean, we could put it in the code.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not mandatory one way or another.
So, and just to make sure I'm clear on this, so the HPC could either approve or deny like the
P&Z.
boundaries.
Right,
And then with the design standards, they can approve, deny, or modify.
yeah, amend or modify.
Okay.
So if HBC says no, P and Z says no, what happens?
Council still gets to determine.
Council still gets to determine.
I mean, the council, we're just making,
Then
we're just making recommendations, and I would assume council listens to those recommendations. I mean, I don't, in the years I've sat in P and Z, they've only not taken one of our recommendations, as I recall. Because it comes with the support of the community typically, so.
And then if there's a disagreement between HPC and P and Z,
You should probably look at.
just thanks, Bunny.
The new old words. I mean. But I mean, if this is what you're recommending is the process, then I mean, this is what we're supposed, I mean, we're just trying to get through this.
Yeah, this is designed to give a clear package to the city council of what how the HPC feels about an application, both the yes or no question of the boundaries essentially, and then the design standards. So this does provide an off ramp for an applicant. If the applicant comes before the or the HPC and the HPC says, no, this isn't crazy. We're not gonna require guardrails on every single building. This gives them the ability to take an off ramp, rework the design standards, and come back in front of the HPC and said, okay, here's something that might work.
Okay, this next section, if the Historic Preservation Commission recommends approval of designation of a local historic district, but recommends denial of proposed design standards, then it shall be deemed that the Historic Preservation Commission's recommendation is for denial of a designation of a local historic district. If the HPC recommends approval of a designation of a local historic district and amends or modifies the proposed design standards, the applicant may supplement its application with a letter detailing any objections or counter proposals to design standards amended or modified by the HPC. Clear as mud. That's attorney that he wrote that.
It sounded like Brian.
So if you approve this, you'll have to write me a check. I'm just kidding.
Honey, I write you one every day.
So essentially what this says is so if the HPC says, yes, this is a great district, but then can't approve the design standards, then that will fold in the decision to create a district and then say, okay, actually, we're not going to have a district here because there's no point of having a district without the design standards. So that's what that's attempting to do. The second part was just what I was talking about. That's the off ramp to essentially to encourage an applicant to work with staff to put together design standards that would be acceptable to the HPC.
Second part though is very, sorry, Ryan, convoluted, because if
Perfect. No, please.
if the HPC amends or modifies the proposed design standards, then does it go forward
Yes.
with that modification?
Yes, it
So
would
it's
go.
not necessarily an off ramp, because what if the property owners don't like those modifications?
Yeah, and what's available there is essentially, okay, let's go back to my example. Property owner says, I have to have gargoyles. HPC says, no, that's crazy. We like everything else here, but we're throwing away your gargoyles. This would give the applicant the opportunity to update his application and say, no, city council, I have to have gargoyles. And that he would have the right to send that to the city council for consideration. Now, the city council would get a recommendation that it doesn't include gargoyles. That's what the HPC has recommended. But he would then have the right to say, hey, I don't care what the HPC said. I want gargoyles, and it's up to the city council to decide whether to include that design standard or not. And so that way, it's kind of giving fair opportunity for both the, the expert recommendation of the HPC, and then also the, the applicant themselves to kind of make their case in front of the city.
Find that.
I can get behind that. I just was.
I just wonder if there's a way. I mean,
Intended.
we're trying to simplify this, right? We're trying to get together to make this simpler. And today we have dealt with more complicated, it appears.
So make it read easier. Is that,
I don't know. I mean, it just,
it's still, I mean, I get it. So
I mean, it's fine. I mean, it is what it is, I suppose, but it just.
maybe we could step out the process a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a block paragraph and
Yeah.
maybe some.
Because I mean, it really doesn't talk about where, like, the confusion comes into play is if it goes forward with modifications.
Mhm.
How I know it says now that you've explained it, I can see that the applicant has supplemented the
Supplement the
application, but
application.
there's a something there that doesn't make that very clear in just the writing. I don't know what that is, but. I understand what you're saying and I agree with what you're saying. I just don't think that this necessarily reads very
Explains
clearly
it.
for that anybody who doesn't have you sitting on their shoulder like a gargoyle telling them.
So just break it down to read easier. Is what I have noted here for next time.
Alright.
Maybe explain what that supplement
It's
application with the
application.
letter, what that. It's going to go to the city council. I mean, that they still have a chance to
Mhm.
Keep their gargoyle.
The applicant can keep moving on.
Right.
All right, do you want to move on to T?
Sure.
And then I don't know how much more we're gonna cover tonight, but, because there's a lot here, but
That's up to the chair.
let's get through these sections anyway, don't you think? That we're, the one we're currently on.
So this section, we'd originally call it appeals, but because the HPC cannot enact a district, that it has to be,
Yeah, the legislative process does not include appeals.
okay.
Ultimately, it's the city council, it's the decision maker, so there's no point of having it as an appeals board. It's gonna get to the city council one way or another.
So now it's called action upon HPC recommendation. So the Historic Preservation Commission's recommendation on an application for designation of a local historic district shall be forwarded to the P and Z for review, provided that if the HPC recommends denial of the application, the applicant may within 7 days of such recommendation of denial, withdraw the application with a notice that the applicant intends to amend its application. Withdrawn and amended applications shall be processed in the same manner as original applications, except that the applicant shall not be required to pay a new application fee, provided that the applicant shall be responsible for any direct costs of the city related to the publication and provision of the notice of the required public hearing.
What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean,
I want to resubmit an application within a 7-day period. Everyone within that district that's gonna get city staff time and postage. I mean, what's that look like?
Are you talking about the direct costs?
Yeah.
The direct costs are just usually the cost of publication. So it's the newspaper and then postage.
That could be, if it's a large district, that could be a whole couple of posts. I don't know.
I was being atypically nice.
Okay.
We want to make them go back, start completely over.
no, I don't think we should make it go back.
saying that.
I think she's saying that they shouldn't incur any expense. The expense has already been
Or
sent
there be a
out.
fixed cost, but they know what.
A fixed cost, but I know what it is, because, like I said, that's a moving target.
What, and how much is the application, 400 or something, or?
Probably something that would have to be future.
Yeah, we don't have an application fee written, I don't think.
Well, we do for P and Z, there's a fee.
I'll say there is for
Or-
community.
For PUDs?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
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 Well, no, I know for PUDs,
And
but-
amendment.
but currently for local historic districts, I don't believe we have an application fee.
You went?
I said, I don't have one for a while anyway.
So this is under the presumption that we're gonna have an application fee, which we approved earlier.
The
Uh,
application fee?
Yeah.
It's back in first section.
Right.
Okay, we did that, I think we did the application fee, so that way it's just, that, I don't think it's like a lot, but it just, nobody just keeps wasting staff time.
So did we have any changes in this section?
On a lighter note, on line 4, application is misspelled.
Yes, it is.
That's our attorney.
I only wrote it 200 times here, so.
It was the gargoyle.
Who pitched that?
He doesn't know how to use spell check yet.
What's it?
Okay, we're down to 10 and
Okay, we ready to move on?
I mean, did you want to make any changes to that space or
Well, like I said, I just think it's a little
open-ended?
open-ended and can mean different things for different people, given. I think it probably needs to be
More specific?
more specific and uniform.
That's even pretty, it's fixed.
Maybe that's it for me. Maybe if it said fixed cost, was specific about
Supplemental fee.
publication.
Yeah, supplemental fee or something, as opposed to all the direct costs done.
Should put market rate, just like lobster on the menu.
Change of day, like
Market
soup to
rate.
jerk. I'm just throwing it out there. If no one thinks it,
No, I understand and agree, we tend to agree, but I don't know if we don't even know what the application fee is. What
what are we changing?
Yes.
And there are applications where the direct costs are actually more than the application. So, and the city subsidizes.
Sure.
You could do something like half of the application.
Too much consistency.
Something like that. It's hard to say because we don't know what the application fee is. And generally what's going to happen is we're going to take a look at this at a staff level and say, okay, what's a reasonable amount of staff time? And then what do we think the publications are going to cost? Try to develop an application fee that fairly, pays back the city for the expenses of doing that. We don't make money on an application fees. And so it's kind of hard to figure out exactly what that's going to look like at this point.
Ryan, would it work to just say withdrawn and amended applications shall be processed in the same manner as original applications with supplemental fee due? And once the fee is those sets, I'm sorry,
Yeah, it is open-ended. I almost should be determined to be, I don't know. I mean, it's not an
there's something, because when you get into direct costs, that
Yeah.
gets crazy. It's just a supplemental fee, and then once we know what the initial fee is, then they can set that specific fee.
So it would just be a set fee. It'd be just another fee category.
Yeah,
An amendment fee.
and then circle back to that once we find out what this application looks like and what the fee for it's gonna be.
Is that something we need to do, is to come up with how much, like an application fee would be? Like, that's something we could do.
Well, yeah, so application fees are set by the city administrator and approved by the city council.
And
I don't think anything would prevent the city or from this body from making a recommendation. but ultimately it's the city.
Is that criteria that those fees are based upon other similar municipalities offering the same services? I mean, how?
No, it's more about our own direct costs.
Your own direct costs, okay.
It's not really, it's a reimbursement mechanism.
Gotcha. Fee structure.
Well, I feel like there's several changes on this, don't you?
Do you want, when we go to do this motion just as amended
Well, this
for
one.
discussion, or do you want a
Come back.
specific?
I think
This
we
one,
want
they were gonna come back next week for us to vote on after they rewrite
next
it.
month, yeah.
You wanna make it again?
Yeah. Let's finish this section.
You missed this.
Maybe.
All right, planning and zoning commission review.
Okay, planning and. It's kind of the same shake. The P and Z approves, denies designation of local landmark, or, I'm sorry, local historic district and the proposed design standards. Utilizing the procedures and review criteria as the same as rezonings.
So the way this was set up, it had the P and Z reviewing the determination of historicness, which I don't think is appropriate. This body or the HPC is the expert in appropriateness. I don't think, or in historic nature, or whatever. I don't think it's appropriate for the P and Z to say, to second guess whether or not something is historic, but they do have a say in whether or not on how this affects development overall in the city. And essentially, this is what a designation as a historic district is akin to a rezoning. It's almost like an overlay. And so the using those standards for rezoning is, I think, an appropriate way for the PZ to review these and say, okay, how do we think this is, putting aside historic, how do we think this is going to affect overall development and land use in the city? That's their role, not to second guess historic determinations.
Okay, on city council. City council shall, by ordinance, approve or deny the designation of a local historic district and the proposed design standards for a local historic district, utilizing the procedures and review criteria, same as rezonings. The city council may modify or amend the design standards, but such modifications or amendments must comply with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties.
So,
Yeah, and I actually think I left something on rezonings and then also the original criteria set forth in here. So the city council looks at everything.
And now,
What we'll work on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's both the rezoning criteria and also these criteria on the very first.
historic
page.
significance.
So if they approve, city council approve, but they think we get you want gargoyles, but we're not doing the gargoyles. No ifs and buts. So we're approving this without gargoyles. At that point, we're stuck with no gargoyles.
Gargoyles are gone.
There's no way to go back and get our gargoyles.
You have to restart the process.
unless the Department of Interior says that
Gargoyles are required.
allowed in that historic nature.
Well, I would say unless those standards say they're required.
Yeah, not necessarily allowed, because they can be allowed, but the city council is like, we don't want to gargoyle.
Necessary requirement.
Okay, I move that the city staff rework this section 7 that we've just been discussing and come back to us next time with revisions.
I second that.
Okay. All those in favor or any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so I don't know, I'll take a poll here, but I think we have discussed 5 pages. And we have about 6 to go. I think we probably wrap it up for tonight. And I would recommend everybody go back. I mean, we just got these documents today, so most of us didn't have a lot of time to review. So maybe be better prepared next.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that, I mean, no, I'm just saying we are better prepared to discuss this and maybe move along a little quicker.
Okay.
Does that sound like a plan?
Reasonable.
All right, so can I have?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
And I would say that if they get reworked, like, and you have them done like next week or before, whatever, I would send them out so we could read them first. I'm not kidding, not next week, but I mean, if you get them out before, 2 hours before the.
We will try to get these out a little bit more.
No, it's
No,
fine.
I know
No,
they're
not-
reworked
I would,
Well,
That way they have a chance to kind of.
to review and be better
Rip up
prepared
the
for
stuff.
stuff. Okay, the next regular meeting is April 7th at 5:30 here. I appreciate each and every one of you being here. Attorney Ryan, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
City staff, all of you.
Yeah.
Carly, Rachel, we're all here because we want to be.
that's right.
All right, thank you all. Have a nice, happy St. Patrick's Day. What? Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was another information or something. A lot. A lot.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm really good. I mean, really good.
I'm moving in tomorrow.
Oh, yes, Jen.
I know.
All right, well, I appreciate your help. Thanks, let me know if you want me.
I've seen you more, today, because I've seen you.
Getting them to ask.